We were building a pretty successful comedy career, and suddenly we're all Christians.
The Lord just spoke to us. We could see that comedy would be a really viable way to communicate the gospel.
Well, we were just naive enough to think we can pull off the ultimate oxymoron, Christian comedy.
That this is a serious topic, but let's have fun telling you about it.
We didn't know any better.
It was like a drink of cold water after this long desert. There just wasn't anything else like it.
What is your name, sir? Buck Weezer.
I'm a junkie. A Bible junkie.
My name's Friday. Good Friday.
I've been working on the engine. It's only got 2 gears, first gear and overdrive. We'll put it in overdrive in a minute.
It's up!
I used to secretly lay on the bedroom floor when I was 13 and play an album by Isaac Airfreight. And in the summer heat and the wind is wide open and hear that and those stories and laugh.
The name's Grover. Claude Grover. Right, it's opening tomorrow night and it's quite a blockbuster. You produced this one yourself, didn't you, big fella? Yes, I did. All my money went into the picture.
And you guys got to find a way to do a comedy album because people need a reason to laugh. And I bet you'd sell 1 million of those who did a comedy album.
A huge part of their success came that they used landmarks of real life, not just landmarks of church life.
We didn't grow up in church. We come from a comedy club context. We were coming from a vocabulary that the whole world could understand, whether you were in the church or outside of the church.
Oh, that's my boss!
I think we gave the body the permission to laugh, and I think we gave a whole young generation of aspiring comedians the permission to use their craft and their talent for the Lord.
All the way up until God really spoke clearly that, you know what, we need to stop. This is over now.
It was just the right time. It was the perfect time to wind it down. God does choose the foolish things to confound the wise. It was an honor. Great time, fond memories.
And you know what? It was a great time being with you.
Same with you. Wouldn't have it any other way. What a partner.
No way.
Yeah.